Find the good in me.
Welcome to the How of Neuroplasticity using art and mindfulness. What we're going to be looking at is how these activities change the pathways in the brain for optimal mental well-being. So if you've been feeling the heaviness of life that life can bring, or you're just curious on ways to shift towards optimal happiness and joy, this workshop is for you. So a little bit about me. My name is Charmaine Husum. I'm an artist, an art therapist, registered therapeutic counselor. I also teach yoga and meditation, and I work somatically with people too. I'm a somatic practitioner. I'm grateful to live and work on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot, Tsuut'ina, Nakota, and the Métis nations here in Calgary, Alberta. So here in my clinic, Center of the Heart, I see people in person and online, both regionally and internationally. A little bit about kind of what I do. The approaches I take in my work are somatic focused using art psychotherapy and mindfulness, which we will be discussing here today. The work I do with clients holds the belief that everyone has the capacity to heal and grow. And together we find a personalized solution for that path to evolve. I believe that the power of healing lies within the individual, and I work as a guide to support that. The areas I specialize in are working with trauma, symptoms of PTSD, complex PTSD, as well as autism, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, addiction, suicidality, and other mental health symptoms. And I also work as an integration specialist for people needing support after psychedelic or plant medicine journeys using art therapy, dream work, meditation, sacred geometry, and transpersonal counseling. So currently my passions are in neuroplasticity, neuroscience, epigenetics, psychedelic integration, as well as intergenerational trauma, which I'm working on some online courses and a book. So that's a little bit about me. So before we begin, I wanted to talk about what we're going to be doing in this workshop. So there'll be a couple meditations with breath work to explore how we can create calm and engage our parasympathetic nervous system. We'll also be doing a couple art directives. One is a warm-up and another to experience how art therapy can quickly move us into a place of deep reflection and healing. Also at the end, I have some bonus materials that I'll give you a link to, including a workbook on today's presentation, and also a powerful art directive that helps reroute neural pathways using sacred geometry. And it was mentioned in the meetup that there are some materials you'll use, although they don't need to be they're not extensive. So what you need to have is paper. You can either have 2 large sheets, or 2 to 3 large sheets of paper, or you can just have regular 8x10 papers. Here I have 1 large sheet, and then I have another that's a smaller sheet, but even just 8x10 paper will work just fine. Any art materials or writing devices you have will help, and having a variety of materials is optimum, because we want to be able to create choice when we're in session. So having a sense of choice actually becomes part of the therapeutic process. But if all you have today is a pen, then that'll work just fine too. So to begin with, I wanted to do a little survey here just to get to know each other, get to know you a little bit. And I'm going to put this poll out here. We're going to say there's going to be 2 choices. So 1 will be yes and 2 will be no. So first of all, and I'm hoping you can see that. Is that right? So to begin with, wondering who has experienced art therapy before. Also wondering how many of you meditate regularly, even just once a week. Also these, your answers, only I see these answers, or I don't actually see who sends what. So, and the third question is of those who meditate, how many of you feel the benefits?
What was 1 and what was 2?
1 is yes and 2 is no. Yeah. I'll just give you a couple minutes to. Okay, so. All right, so it sounds like quite a bit of people 1 is yes and 2 is no. So just over half have experienced art therapy. Sounds like there's quite a few people that meditate in this group. That's great. We will be doing some meditations today. And the third poll here says that people are really noticing the benefits of their meditation. So that's fantastic. It has huge benefits. It's true. Oh, and I will share these results with you there. And there we go. Thank you for answering those questions. Just helps me to get a sense of who's in the room and focus on what we'll be sharing tonight. So to begin with, let's talk about neuroplasticity. Diving right in. So this is actually just a Google search I did. What is neuroplasticity? So the answer was the capacity of neurons and neural networks in the brain to change their connections and behavior in response to new information, sensory stimulation, development, damage, or dysfunction. So what does neuroplasticity do to our brain? Again, this is just out of, as this definition says, neuroplasticity can be viewed as a general umbrella term that refers to the brain's ability to modify, change, and adapt, both structure and function throughout life and in response to experience. So neuroplasticity is the capacity we have to change neural networks in the brain and to produce different results. So it's a natural healing that can happen. Our discussions and activities today are going to be focusing on how to make that happen. So when we're looking at how to make that happen, we're going to start with looking at brain integration. So we have vertical brain integration and horizontal brain integration. So I wanted to go over some of the basics of brain functions and models that are used in art therapy and counseling to achieve inner states of peace and calm. And there are a couple ways of looking at this, and for the purposes today, we're going to stick with fairly basic concepts, but effective tools we can use to integrate both vertically and horizontally. So to begin with, we have horizontal integration, where we look at the basic functions of the right and left hemisphere of the brain. The right brain function, the right side of the brain represents passion, experience of taste and feelings, creativity, free spirit, imagination, yearning, sensuality, movement, vivid colors, and the senses. It's also often represented as the softer, more passive expression in our brain, capable of feeling states and creative thinking. The left side of the brain typically rules the orderly, statistical, mathematical, logical, practical, rational way of thinking. So seeing things in straight lines. This area of the brain becomes more engaged when working through complex problems, equations, patterns, and is more linear in its expression. So that brings us to the corpus callosum. And this is the area of the brain that becomes engaged when we're integrating the two hemispheres. Now, this can be done through bilateral stimulation, like drumming or playing an instrument, through art making, as well as meditation. There are just a few examples. And this very area is very important as it allows for communication between the left and right hemispheres. Using both sides of our brain helps to regulate our feelings and emotions, making sense of the world around us. And it promotes emotional intelligence so we can live a more balanced and fulfilling life. Ultimately, we want both sides of our brain working together equally. So without activities that stimulate integration within each side of the brain, it's difficult for one side to make sense of how the other side sees things. You cannot put feelings and expressions into boxes as the left hemisphere would require. They become restricted. They must be felt to be truly experienced. Also, the right brain also has difficulty making sense of how the left brain sees things. As a society, we tend to be most left brain dominant. We live in a world that's become so fast-paced with electronics, work, stresses, immediate gratification, fast food, limited human connection, and so forth. This causes an imbalance that can create a great disruption in the natural flow of everyday living. This is why it's so important to create integration and balance within both sides of the brain. Without integration, without connecting to our feeling states, to others in community, to our creative nature, an imbalance in our brains can result in an imbalance in our mental health as well. Humans are creatures that thrive in connection. It may not always feel that way with the divisiveness we're seeing in our world, but it is true to say that one smile from another can change the course of our day. How do we achieve horizontal integration? Well, observing and especially drawing or creating art allows for this integration in the most therapeutic way, as does meditation, mindfulness, and many yogic postures. Whenever we do anything that requires logical and creative thought simultaneously, we are integrating the hemispheres of the brain. Another powerful way both mindfulness and art therapy work to change the brain is by rerouting neurotransmitters. The neuropsychologist Donald Hebb first used the phrase neurons that fire together wire together in 1949 to describe how pathways in the brain are formed and reinforced through repetition. What this means is we develop habits and ways of being in the world that may not always serve our highest purpose, but both art therapy and meditation offer an opportunity to explore life in new ways using mindful awareness of our emotions, messages from within the body, and tactile sensory expression through art making. So now let's take a look at what vertical integration means. So when we're discussing vertical integration of the brain, we're looking at what is often described as the top-down, bottom-up processes that are looking at the primal brain or the reptilian brain, which we'll call the lower brain for the purposes of our discussion tonight, which controls the basic function of survival in all animals, such as our heart rate, our breathing, the way we digest foods and sleeping. This is activated when we feel a threat, whether it's real or perceived. And the higher functioning brain systems, or the rational, lies within the prefrontal cortex. It's responsible for regulating the body. It regulates our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. And these are our brakes and accelerator. It tells the body to quicken our heart rate, breathing, etc., or to slow down those same functions. Our ability to tune into someone else is located in this area of the brain, as well as our ability to feel compassion and empathy. There's also within this area of the brain response flexibility, so that space between an action and a response. So we're not as reactive in situations. And it also helps, it also guides our ability to calm fear when we're feeling afraid and aroused. And so with vertical integration as an example, if we didn't have these higher functioning upper brain, prefrontal cortex pieces happening, as an example, when a child is dysregulated, and maybe some people here have seen this before, I'm sure, but when they're having a tantrum, they're incapable of hearing or learning from the experience in that moment. So what's happening in their brain in this moment is completely coming from their primal brain, their lower brain. Their body is interpreting that there is a danger, whether real or imagined, that the child needs to react with fight, flight, or freeze. What needs to happen is for their body to calm down so they can think rationally before being able to process information and moving beyond the states they're experiencing. There's a number of ways that this can happen. By asking the child to name their feelings in the moment, a process is happening in the brain where the survival or primal area of the brain needs to use words located in the higher functioning brain or prefrontal cortex to describe what's happening. This can lower the intensity of the feelings happening in the body. Another tool to use is to ask the child where they are feeling intensity within their body. Again, a bottom-up process, bringing thoughts and feelings from the lower brain to the higher brain. These processes, too, they work not only with children, but adults as well. Name it to tame it is a term often used in therapy to alleviate discomfort and create space to allow a deeper understanding of feelings, where they come from, and why they are presenting themselves. By working with thoughts, feelings, and the body, we are connecting the primitive, emotional, and thinking parts of our brain to achieve greater regulation and inner control. We move out of a state of survival so we can process feelings rationally. Another example, creating an even deeper integration in the vertical processes, is when we tap into the reward center of the brain, which is also located in the primal brain. This is done when we move from the lower brain, survival or threat, to the higher rational thinking and back down to the lower, the reward center. For instance, in my yoga and meditation classes, I always direct students to listen to their body and stop if there's a sharp pain. But if the feeling is more of a discomfort, I invite them to use the breath to move them through it because there will be benefits. The same goes for many forms of exercise. So there may be an urge to bolt and leave a class because one more second of an exercise feels too much, but our higher functioning brain remembers that the teacher mentioned, breathe through the discomfort and there will be benefits, engaging the reward receptors of the brain. So now let's move into discussing what art therapy is and how this mode of therapy supports neuroplasticity and mental wellness. Oh, I forgot to put those pieces in. So what is art therapy and how can it change our life to support mental wellness? So art therapy is a mental health profession that integrates psychotherapeutic techniques with the creative process to improve mental health and well-being for people of all ages. Sometimes referred to as the creative arts therapy or expressive arts therapy, it encourages people to express and understand emotions through artistic expression and creativity. Art therapy helps people resolve conflicts and problems, develop interpersonal skills, manage behavior, reduce stress, increase self-esteem and self-awareness, and achieve insight one may not have had before. The profession of art therapy integrates the fields of human development, visual art, so drawing, painting, sculpture, and other forms, and the creative process with models of counseling and psychotherapy to support mental health and alleviate emotional problems related to disruptive life experiences. And you do not need to be an artist to do art therapy. Quite the opposite. It's more about an expression of feelings and bringing feelings from inside the body to outside. So it helps support, and it's used to assess and treat anxiety, depression, and other mental and emotional problems and disorders, impulsivity, and other attentional issues like ADHD and autism, substance abuse and other addictions, family and relationship issues, suicidality, abuse and domestic violence, social and emotional difficulties related to disability and illness, trauma and loss, physical, cognitive, and neurological problems, and psychosocial difficulties. So by using art therapy with a certified art therapist, one is able to bring unconscious feelings to consciousness. And this can help a person give expression to their feelings and hidden inner conflicts that they may not have words for. Oftentimes, issues that affect our mental health have happened before we even knew how to talk, or sometimes it's not clear what's at the root of an issue. Using art in a therapeutic way helps uncover aspects of self that may have been locked in the body. So we bring pieces that are inside out into the art in an unconscious way for that to now be looked at and explored. So when people are then able to associate feelings verbally to the artwork that they've created, the therapy speeds up recovery. And it's through making art that feelings trapped in the body can be moved and expanded on, bringing in awareness to ourselves that was before uncovered. And so that will move us into mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? And I'm sure we've all, it sounds like most people here have experienced what mindfulness is, but I'm going to go through this and describe some extra pieces that I've noticed and how that relates to neuroplasticity and how we can create a change in the brain and neuroplasticity through mindfulness. So the act of mindfulness means to calm the mind. allowing the busyness or the chatter within to soften. So we become aware of the internal sensations in the body, as well as our surroundings in a mindful way. John Kabat-Zinn, who is the creator of mindfulness-based stress reduction protocols, which is now widely used in healing professions, defined it as paying attention to the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. So when we become mindful, we're able to slow time in a way that begins to resource us to feel a greater sense of clarity and balance in life. So noticing when we are coming from a place of ego instead of a place of mindful awareness can drastically change our interactions with the world. This is sometimes referred to in yoga, meditation, and other schools of thought as getting out of your own way to allow your destiny or dharmic path to unfold. And so eloquently put by philosopher and writer Alan Watts, ego, the self which has believed itself to be, is nothing but a pattern of habits. So mindfulness is a way for us to create new habits and awarenesses that involve and interact fully with the world around us instead of only ourselves. It allows us to see the world through a clearer lens while becoming aware of our own thought process that may at times cloud this lens. When we're using art therapy with mindfulness, we're working to reroute neural networks to change patterns, habits, and behaviors in the brain. During this experience, if our egoic self kicks in, it can inhibit this change from taking place, which we will discuss in a bit. And something that I've also included in your bonus materials, speaking more about the default mode network that we won't get into a lot today, but it'll be included in the materials for you to read more on that. So this is why staying present and recognizing when we go offline instead of connecting to the present moment is so important. It's a process that takes time, but it has tremendous benefits for our mental health and our happiness. So when we're stressed out, our prefrontal cortex or executive functioning mind, it goes offline. Our judgments become impaired, and mindfulness keeps those frontal lobes and prefrontal cortex online. It helps integrate rather than dissociate, as Pat Ogden, one of the most amazing somatic and trauma therapists, a great teacher of mine, has said. A great way of doing this is tapping into our body. So noticing the physical sensations, how they come and go, noticing your breath. These sensations are not permanent, and we notice them when we become mindful. However, not everyone feels comfortable or safe in a mindful state. And so getting there can become a huge part of the healing process. When a person has learned to dissociate or escape as a way to cope with their world, it's important that there be an acceptance of how this pattern has been of service in the past. It's a defense mechanism, and we can't just shed parts of self without honoring what purpose they have had in keeping us feeling protected. But as we develop and grow through conscious awareness, this process becomes easier and more accessible. If this is true for you, just notice without any judgment when you may be dissociating. Just becoming mindfully aware of this will help to bring you into the present moment. This is you reprogramming your brain and creating neuroplasticity. As Dan Siegel, a leader in the world of neuroscience and neuroplasticity, suggests, your mind can change your molecules. So what are ways we can become more mindful? We've already discussed some, like through meditation, becoming consciously aware of our breath, using art and therapy, and using vertical and horizontal integration of our brain processes. Another way to become mindful and support neuroplasticity in the brain is through the use of mantra or song. So chanting mantras or singing even helps to balance your brain and promote new neural networks to form. Many of the ancient Eastern schools of thought, as well as yogic and Ayurvedic sciences, speak of meridian points in the body. So when we go to an acupuncturist, they put needles in points within the body to allow the energy to move. So when these become blocked, we also become blocked because life force energy is unable to move freely throughout the body. So it's believed that there's 182 meridian points, or sometimes called nadis, on the roof of our mouth. So when we chant or sing, these areas become activated, allowing for the secretion of neurochemicals in the brain, which supports an elevated mood and the creation of new patterns to support an overall sense of well-being. Another way to become mindful is a tool that can be used during meditation, which is our eye gaze, or drishti, eye focus. So there's several different places to focus the eyes when meditating, depending on which meridians and parts of the brain are to be stimulated. There's the third eye point, also called the brow point, and at the root of the nose. So the eyes are closed and the attention is on the brow. The closed eyes are gently raised as if watching a movie on the inside of the forehead between the eyebrows. This stimulates the central nerve channel of the body. In yoga, we call it the Sushumna. And it said that a focus at this point also stimulates the pituitary gland, allowing our intuition to develop. It also puts pressure on the optic nerve in a way that allows for a secretion of neurochemicals in the brain, supporting an elevated mood. And I do have in your bonus materials some different research articles that have looked at this with MRIs and what meditation is doing to the brain. So another point to focus on is the tip of the nose. The eyes are slightly open, looking at the tip of the nose. This stimulates the pineal gland and the frontal lobe of the brain. New energy pathways are created in the brain patterns. Another one is the moon center. This is at the tip of the chin. So in meditation, with our eyes closed and rolled down, we're focusing at this area at the tip of the chin. It creates a cooling and calming effect over the body, and it helps for one to see themselves more clearly. And the last one I was going to share with you is the crown chakra. So the top of the head, also called the 10th gate. The eyes are closed and rolled upwards as if looking through the top of the head. This stimulates the pineal and the crown energy center. So now that we've moved through the discussion on neuroplasticity, art therapy, and mindfulness, I'd like to move into the experiential part of our workshop. So we'll start with breath and breath work to engage our nervous systems. The breath is a powerful source of transformation. So the rate and rhythm of breath are intimately connected to our mental and emotional states. Just as the emotions of the mind cause the breath to vary, by consciously controlling the breath, we gain control over our mind and our emotions. In my art therapy practices, one of the first things I pay attention to when I first see a client, whether online or in person, is how they are breathing. So noticing the breath says a lot about how a person is feeling in the moment. Notice how you're breathing right now. Is your breath shallow and regulated to the upper chest? Or is it deep and concentrated in the belly? How do you feel in this moment? The respiratory system is one of the only major systems in the body, which is usually involuntary, but which can also be voluntarily controlled. Our heart also beats involuntarily, but if we want to control it, we slow down our breath, bringing us into a state of calmness and relaxation. Breath is the life force that keeps us going. Without breathing, we would die. So when we're able to control the breath, we're able to control the way we feel in the moment and develop a sense of control over the stress in our lives. In this first activity, we're going to be engaging the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems with breath. The parasympathetic nervous system, when engaged, allows us to feel calm, grounded, and relaxed. This is activated by breathing deeply into the belly with full, slow, and controlled breaths. The sympathetic nervous system Engaged allows us to feel more alert and present. This becomes engaged when we breathe into the chest with quick, full breaths. And there's so much more to what these nervous systems do for our body and when they become engaged involuntarily. But for now, we're going to stick to their basics and how to stimulate them. So pay attention to how you feel after each exercise here. So to begin with, just notice your breath in this moment. Is it shallow? Is it deep in the stomach? Or is it in the chest? And now just be with the breath, noticing how you're breathing. This is your life force you're breathing in. We call it prana. So to begin with, the parasympathetic nervous system engagement, we're going to begin to lengthen the breath. Closing the eyes if that feels comfortable. Slowing the breath and feeling each moment as you inhale deeply. Now place your hands on your belly, holding yourself, feeling comforted. Allow the breath to fill your belly first, and then moving into the lungs, up to the clavicle, pause, and release from the lungs, and then finally expelling all the breath from the belly, pushing it out, and repeat. Filling the belly, the chest, up to the clavicle, pause, and then releasing the breath from the lungs and from the belly. Pressing your feet into the ground. Just continue with this breath, noticing any body sensations that come up as you breathe full breaths into the belly. And just be with these, observing, allowing a sense of relaxation, surrender, and release. This is your parasympathetic nervous system engaged. Just notice how this feels. Pressing your feet into the ground, remembering the sensation and remembering that you can come back to this at any time with 5 deep belly breaths. And next, we're going to be moving into engaging our sympathetic nervous system. So which creates more alertness and helps us to stay focused. And in this breathing exercise, we're going to be taking 5 deep breaths. And as we do, we're going to be raising the arms above the head. Our eyes are open and they're going to be following the hands as you raise them. We're going to be breathing fast and deep into the chest. So begin 5 deep breaths. Eyes are open, focusing at the hands. And relax. This is our sympathetic nervous system engaged, and it helps to allow us to feel alert and present, not just returning your breath to normal, just noticing where it goes. So when your breath is normal, what feels most comfortable or familiar to you? Is it in the upper chest, the belly? What system are you currently engaging? We invite you to take notice of this throughout your days and just noticing if you are beginning to feel a sense of anxiety or a tension in the chest, breathing deep into the belly, pressing your feet onto the ground, sometimes too pressing your hands into the chair next to you, and even looking around the room and naming 10 things, objects that you see, what color they are, what shape they are. And just continue breathing into the belly to alleviate any symptoms of anxiety. Also, if we're having trouble focusing and keeping our attention, doing that exercise, 5 deep breaths, raising the hands up with the eyes open and looking at the hands as they raise up, breathing full breaths into the chest, will help engage that parasympathetic nervous system. So how do art therapy and mindfulness alter the ways our brains work? So we've discussed parts of this. It integrates the right and left hemispheres of the brain, as well as the top-down and bottom-up processes. It reroutes neurotransmitters, engages the parasympathetic nervous system to bring a sense of calm, creates an inner awareness that supports trusting oneself and fostering a deeper self-love. And it offers an opportunity to explore life in new ways using mindful awareness of our emotions, messages from within the body, and tactile sensory expression through art making. So now let's warm up with some creativity before we move into our art directive. And so what we'll need is a large piece of paper or 2 sheets of paper if you don't have a large one, and 2 different colors, either crayon, pastel, or chalk. Pencil crayons work as well, or even a pen. So I have this large piece of paper here, and I am going to grab whatever stands out for you that you would like to grab. So I think I'm going to take a blue and a pink pastel. And so to begin with, just putting your materials down, sitting up straight, allowing the spine to be straight, pulling the shoulders back to open up the chest, and just notice your breath. Begin breathing into the belly with full and slow breaths. Pressing your feet on the ground, bringing yourself into a state of calm. And we'll begin by using your dominant hand and creating large circles on your paper. Keep breathing. So I'm just creating a circle on my paper with my dominant hand, breathing. And now begin drawing with your non-dominant hand circles. You may need to stabilize the paper. And now beginning with drawing circles with both hands in either direction, just drawing circles. Continue drawing large circles with both hands while you stay connected to deep belly breaths. You may close your eyes if you wish. And just continue paying attention to any sensations or feelings in the body. Becoming mindfully aware of what the materials feel like on the page. Becoming mindfully aware of the sound that you get when you create these circles. Staying connected to the breath. And just aware of what's happening in the body in this moment. And inhaling deeply now. Stopping with your circles. And the eyes closed, if that feels comfortable, just noticing. Just doing an inventory of the body, noticing what sensations come up. This exercise works to help integrate the left and right hemisphere, helps activate the corpus callosum. Inhaling deep and exhaling fully, pressing your feet into the ground. And now we're going to move into our art directive. That one was just a warm-up. And so what we'll need for materials is some paper, art materials, or a writing device. And having a variety of materials is optimum, as I said earlier, because, excuse me, we're creating choice within the session. So having a sense of choice actually becomes part of the therapeutic process. Before we begin, though, and as I do in all my sessions with clients, is we need to come into the body. We need to come into mindful awareness before we begin the art process, because what happens when we're creating art is often we can move into our head and think, am I doing it right? What should I do next? What we want is to create from that sense, that space of unconscious understanding and awareness. So I often describe it as looking through the eyes of the heart. So allowing whatever you're creating to come through you as an expression of the heart, expression of feeling, rather than a feeling in the mind, in the head, rather than left brain. We're working with the right brain, but we're actually integrating both. And so to do this, I wanted to share with you a really special meditation that I use. I find it's fantastic for engaging the parasympathetic nervous system and just bringing you into a sense of complete calm. So when it's left nostril breathing. So we're going to be here for a couple minutes. What I'll invite you to do is with your right hand, just plugging your right nostril and breathing through the left. That's it. Full belly breaths or chest breaths, wherever the breath might go for you. Just continue inhaling and exhaling through the left nostril. Allowing the breath to slow down, to expand. As we breathe in through the left, we're washing over the right side of the brain, activating these creative centers, activating this soft moon energy as it's sometimes described. The eyes are closed with a focus at the brow point at the third eye. Continue slowing down the breath. And just noticing how you're feeling in this moment. As you continue with this left nostril breathing, I invite you to bring your attention now to your heart center. As you mindfully bring your awareness to the center in your heart, imagine a light in this area within the chest, in the heart center. And with each breath, imagining this space growing. Continue breathing through the left nostril, allowing this space inside the heart to grow with each breath until it becomes brighter and fuller, until it reaches the inside edge of your skin. Continue breathing deep into this space, allowing the breath to slow down and expand as this light within you now expands past your skin to surround you completely. Pressing your feet on the ground, just allowing yourself to feel this safety, this space that you've created, that's come from within, that is now containing you. As we continue on with the art directive, I will invite you to stay connected to this breath, to this feeling, to this sensation of energy within you. It's from this area that we're going to be creating tonight. And so now releasing your hand, breathing through both nostrils, just noticing how you're feeling in the body, noticing any sensations, relaxing your shoulders, relaxing the jaw. And when you're ready, coming back into the room and looking at the materials in front of you. The art directive we're going to be working on tonight is called we're going to be doing a non-dominant hand portrait. So what I invite you to do is looking at all the materials and staying connected to your breath in that heart-centered space, noticing what stands out for you and acting on that. Don't move into the head to think this is what I might need. Really feeling, sensing what you need in this moment. So grabbing whatever materials you need, I invite you now with your paper and whatever your drawing device is to begin sketching a portrait of you. And we're not making art here. This isn't art. We're not making things beautiful. It's an expression of self. And what we're doing is we're activating the different parts of the brain. We're creating integration between the left and right hemisphere, which also taps into an emotional piece of acceptance. So before I won't go into that any further until we're finished, but I invite you now to begin creating, drawing with your non-dominant hand. It might be difficult. Stay with the breath, stay connected to that energy inside, and creating a portrait of you, a drawing of you. You can use whatever materials you choose. It doesn't have to be just one if you have multiple materials there. And just noticing any sensations, thoughts, feelings that arise as you create. And we'll take about 15 minutes here, 10 to 15 minutes to just continue drawing. Staying connected to your breath. And creating an image that's representative of you. Noticing the sounds of the materials on the paper. Noticing the feeling of the paper beneath the material that you're using. And no, it's not on the same page. It's on the new piece of paper. Thank you, Mary, for asking that question. Staying connected to your breath as you continue to create. Noticing what it feels like to not be in control entirely, but to create control using this non-dominant hand. Paying attention to any feelings, sensations, memories that may arise as you create. Staying connected to the breath, noticing if you hold your breath. Allowing an acceptance to wash over you. Allowing yourself to have a sense of wonder and fun with this process. Like I said, we're not making art, we're expressing what's within, and it can be any age that expression comes from. There are no mistakes. We have about another 7 minutes, 6 minutes that we'll continue with this. But if you finish earlier, just staying with the piece you've created, breathing deep into the belly, pressing the feet onto the ground, and just noticing any thoughts, sensations, feelings that might arise. I invite you to, if it feels available or if it feels supportive, maybe just write out or journal. You can even do it on the page or the other side of the page if there's any feelings that are coming up, if you've already finished. Otherwise, just staying connected to the breath, connected to the process of creating a portrait of you with your non-dominant hand. Knowing too that this process is for you, you don't have to share this with anybody. Staying connected to your breath. A couple more minutes before we come back. So another minute, just finishing up. Notice how you feel as you finish your creation, this non-dominant portrait, non-dominant hand portrait. And taking a full belly breath and exhaling fully, pressing your feet into the ground. I invite you as you look at your image now to just notice any thoughts, feelings, or sensations that come up. And if it feels available to you, to ask this image that you've created that's come out of you now onto this paper, if there's any messages it has. And just allowing a space in the body, in the heart, in the mind, wherever, allowing these messages to come forward. Just noticing when you ask, is there any messages you have for me? Really taking these in, continue staying connected to your breath. Noticing your feet on the ground or where your seat is touching your chair, noticing that you're grounded, that you're supported. For whatever to come up, to arise, to do so. Notice if there's anything that needs to be altered or changed. And in this moment, just taking some time to do that. And so, as we come to a close with this art directive, I would invite you, if anything has come up for you that feels that you're needing extra support with, to really just tapping into the breath, tapping into the body of that inner wisdom, and also journaling about it can be super supportive. And so also just wanted to name too, often when we're doing these exercises, it can bring up a lot. If we're just living at that edge where just the smallest thing can push us beyond, I wanted to make sure that everyone was feeling that they did have support. And so if you are in crisis and you need someone to talk to immediately, there's an international crisis line, www.befrienders.org. Or if you're in Canada, there's crisisservicescanada.ca. You can also call the number 1-833-456-4566, or even text 45645.